So it's the end of game turn 2 here in the Korean War. You can see I've put the dead piles here, so these are ROK units, South Koreans. This is similarly the same. They're just regiments. There's also in there two North Korean, these yellow ones, North Korean divisions. So they've been knocked down. There's one here, and I believe, yes, and there's one here. They've been knocked down a step. So they have 3 steps. Regiments only have the one. So notably what happened, well, the first thing was that I've gone up to UN intervention 2, so we got the full reinforcements for this turn, but only a mobilization and 1 and rules of engagement 2, so those aren't very high. We had a roll on global tension, we got a 0, so we were quite safe in terms of that. But looking at the end of the turn is the victory points, and the UN score victory points according to the cities which they hold. So for example, this city's worth 1, this city's worth 2, Busan there is worth 4. Going up into North Korea, this one's worth 2, production centre's worth 4, there's 2 and 2 there, 4 there, and similarly like 4, 5 there, 5 here, 5 there, 6 here. So high up they get good victory points, but the point is that we've got this many turns left of the game, providing global tension stays low enough, and we have to score 153 more victory points just to get a tactical victory. Lower than that's a draw, and I've lost my rule book, hang on a sec. Okay, yes, and if the US gain only 162, 167 is a draw, 161 is a marginal victory. So you can see for the North Koreans, so you can see if we've got 15 now, doing the maths, we need to score 15 more each turn, and then about 3 more, I think, just to get a minor tactical victory. What that means is that we will score these cities that are still held by the United Nations every turn. So that if we keep these for the rest of the game, we will get 15 each turn. We just need to take 1 or 2 more cities for 1 turn and win. But how likely is that going to be? Now, I made a mistake in my first video, and the explanation is, you see that chain of red? If the North Koreans gain all 6 of those, they get an automatic victory. I said it included Busan, it doesn't. Busan's here. So we could hold on to just Busan, but if they have Masan here, Daegu, Kumcheon, Daejeon, etc., Incheon and Seoul, then the North Koreans will gain a victory. Now, they are threatening down this side. The Americans, I should say Americans, but I should say the UN, mainly Americans, of course, but here it was in fact ROK, South Korean forces, moved up several units. 1 had been destroyed earlier. They moved up 2 more regiments, and they were eaten up in turn. So this is here we have the Gyeongsang Mountains, Taebyun Mountains, so it's like quite a heavy mountain range, difficult to travel through. So effectively that's a whole nother front. You can see that the Koreans, they reinforced it with one of their new divisions at last game turn. They're threatening all the way down to the peninsula here. They could also cut across, although this road doesn't actually link up with this road, only part way. So it's more likely that they will keep steaming on down there. Now, South Koreans have blocked along the river here, and this one, we've got Far Eastern Command Division quickly rushed in. That came up from from Busan. So they're blocking across here. We've got another Far Eastern Command Division here, ROK Regiment here. So they're kind of holding a line, and the North Koreans have formed a line to meet them. They did try. I think they had. Yeah, all three of those had an attack across and weren't successful. The river line gives you -2 on your die roll. Then the other thing the Americans did at the UN is they have one amphibious invasion capability on the game turn 2. Game turn 3 they'll get 2, and from then on they can have 3 a turn. Now they did look up here to sort of throw a spanner in what will soon become a supply network for the North Koreans. You don't need to worry about supply in the first 2 months for either side, and you don't worry about initiative. The North Koreans automatically have it, but from now on depots, supplies and initiative are going to be determined along supply routes and placements of depots. So this production centre, there's one here and one here. Also, if we took this, then reinforcements would come back either over on the eastern seaboard there or further up here, so significantly further away. So there was some thought, but these are all garrisoned. Even just this tiny town is actually garrisoned because it's a possible amphibious invasion route. So that would have, using the units we had, that would have been a 4-to-1 attack. Normally 4-to-1 is good odds, but where's my sheet? That's not the table we want here. So on the CRT you have the amphibious assault line. So normally units are in clear, so you know, say 3-to-1 odds. If they're in non-clear, that could be any other terrain, a mountain, rough, etc. Feels that's 4-to-1. But to get the same column on an amphibious assault, you need 8-to-1 odds. We would have been on 4-to-1 odds, so that's only just one better than not great. And on a D10, we'd have needed to roll a 9, which is not easy to get because these dice start on a 0, so they go from 0 to 9. Now we could have had. Oh, hang on a sec. Okay, I've just checked, and you can't do like normally. What you do is you have 3 what do they call them, like action points, and you can spend 1 to 3 to move or to fight, or a mixture of both. If you spend all 3 to fight, you will get the bonus of an all-out attack, or 2 to fight, you'll get an intensive attack, but you know, you wouldn't be able to move far with that one. You wouldn't be able to move at all with that one. You don't get those on the amphibious assaults. Normally you can get naval support if it's a coastal hex. Now it doesn't say here, I might have to annotate to remind me, but you get +3 on an amphibious assault. So we would actually have had +3. So we would have got sort of a third chance of getting a defender retreat and getting which would destroy a garrison, getting that. It's still not good odds, so didn't do that. Invaded here, it was an empty hex. It was quickly met by a North Korean division, and then the UN force subsequently attacked that and caused a step loss to it, but not a retreat. So things that all the UN movements have been met and countered quite successfully, mainly because you roll a die for operation, for how many each player, they on their operations turn in the operations phase you alternate, and at the moment the North Koreans go first. You roll depending, first of all it will depend on your initiative level, which will depend upon supply and depots, but we're not there yet. On game turn 2, for example, the UN will roll, and if they roll a 0 or a 1 they get nothing, and they had quite a few of that, so it was their turn, they had no operations. Then the North Koreans on their initiative table in game turn, they always get 1. They were getting some 2s and some 3s. So what that would mean is that 3 units could move perhaps to 0 of the UN, and then the UN would get another roll. So the UN mainly are getting 1s and 2s. That is now over. So now next turn we're going to go into supplies and depots and so forth. And I think what I might do is record at least parts of the whole turn, not my sort of ummings and ahhings in between, but parts of the turn, so you can get an idea of how a whole turn, a full gameplay plays out. So this is the early stages. I now have to find out what reinforcements we're going to get, but first I move to game turn 3 and I have to decide my commitment levels if I adjust any of them. So it was only the second month of the war, and the Americans only had 2 air units, so they just had very little close air support, which gives you a modifier on the combat chart. They didn't even try to interdict because the chances were it wasn't going to have any effect. So yeah, we're on 15 victory points, about to start game turn 3, and the North Koreans have a third of their overall objectives for automatic victory. But the UN are not doing badly, I would say. It was nice that they managed to hold them off on the Gungang River there. We're working with zones of control. You can't move from zone of control to zone of control, so he could not like slip through there. You can move out of a zone of control, but it costs 3 movement points. Now if you spend 1 of your action points you get 4 movement points, so you could only just do that. You could spend all 3 of your action points, get 12 movement points, so you could quite handily say this one disengage, that would be 4 movement points there, 5, 6, 7 into this terrain, and now he's got 1 action point left. He could fight there, but he has the river to go over, so instead he could go say 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and he needs +3 for going over the river, so that would cost 15 movement points. He couldn't do it. But for example, if that unit wasn't there, he could skirt it around and maybe just cross there in using all of his action points for that turn, or at least that cycle. There being 2 operations cycles in each turn. So you see how this is quite an effective delaying line, at least. Obviously there's a gap here. However, if this one wants to disengage to take advantage of that, then this one likewise can move up here. It's going to get complicated with supplies, because then the units, it's very rare to get completely out of supply, because you just need to trace. You could trace through mountains or wherever, but you can get to very limited or what do they call it? Extended command range, whereby depending on how your general, the depot you're tracing to, how many supplies it has spent, for the type of offensive it's conducting, restricted, limited, accelerated, or full-on offence, you will get, in fact, yeah, sorry, that's right, within extended command range. So if you're beyond, I think it's 20 movement points. Yeah, so if you're 21 movement points from a depot, no matter through whatever terrain, everything's going to be at half. So, this, say if that fellow went here, this fellow went here, he's not likely to be able to trace. Well, I don't know, but anyway, he's going to be at half attack and defence, so it will make him a more fragile division. Okay, so that's enough for now. I'll get back with turn 3.